Today, what two phase 2 trials reveal about DMT as a potential antidepressant? A patient has failed 2 antidepressants, still depressed at 6 weeks. You've adjusted the dose, tried another class, maybe added psychotherapy. Nothing is touching it. But what if one supervised session lasting less than 20 minutes could produce measurable antidepressant effects that last for months? That is the question driving 2 recent phase 2 trials of DMT in depression. And the early data is surprisingly strong. DMT N-N-dimethyltryptamine, is a serotonergic psychedelic and sigma-1 receptor agonist. It is endogenous to the human brain and found in the plant-based brew ayahuasca. What makes DMT particularly interesting for psychiatry is its time profile. Unlike psilocybin, which produces a 4 to 6 hour experience, or intravenous ketamine, vaporized or intravenous DMT peaks within minutes, and the active experience resolves within 10 to 20 minutes. That shorter window makes psychological support more practical and could reduce the cost and logistical burden of psychedelic-assisted therapy. The first open-label phase 2 trial of vaporized DMT in treatment-resistant depression was published in Neuropsychopharmacology in April 2025. 14 patients with TRD received a fixed-order dose escalation, 15 milligrams first for a safety check, then 60 milligrams. The results were striking. MADRS scores dropped an average of 21 points by day 7, a highly significant reduction. 85% of patients met response criteria at day 7, a 50% or greater reduction in depression severity, and 57% achieved remission, defined as a MADRS score of 10 or less. These effects persisted through the 3-month follow-up. There were no serious adverse events. Suicidal ideation also decreased significantly after dosing, with no severe suicidal ideation reported the day after treatment. The first double-blind randomized controlled trial of DMT for depression came out in Nature Medicine in February 2026. This was a phase 2 RCT testing intravenous DMT called SBL-026, formulated as DMT fumarate in 34 adults with moderate to severe major depressive disorder. Participants received a single 21.5 milligram infusion over 10 minutes, plus supportive psychotherapy. Controls received placebo with the same psychological support. At 2 weeks, the DMT group showed a mean MADRS difference of -7.35 compared to placebo, a statistically significant result with a p-value of 0.023. During the open-label extension, antidepressant effects were sustained through 3 months. There was no meaningful difference between those who received 1 versus 2 doses. Adverse events were mostly mild to moderate infusion site pain, nausea, transient anxiety. No serious adverse events occurred. Separate but related compound 5-methoxy-DMT, or 5-MeO-DMT, is also moving through clinical trials. It is a distinct molecule from N N-DMT with different potency and receptor binding properties. A phase 1/2 trial of a vaporized 5-MeO-DMT formulation called GH001 in treatment-resistant depression established initial safety and a preliminary antidepressant signal. Separate phase 1 randomized trial tested a sublingual microdose formulation of 5-MeO-DMT in adults with moderate depression and anxiety, focusing on safety and tolerability at doses below the psychedelic threshold. Both compounds show distinct pharmacologic profiles, and they should not be conflated. The 5-MeO-DMT data, while earlier in development, suggests that the broader tryptamine family has therapeutic potential beyond psilocybin. How does DMT stack up against the other psychedelic and psychedelic-adjacent treatments already in psychiatry? Psilocybin has the largest evidence-based multiple phase 2 trials, a completed phase 2 and several phase 3 trials underway. Ketamine and esketamine are already FDA approved for treatment-resistant depression. DMT sits earlier in development, 2 phase 2 trials completed, phase 3 not yet started, but its practical advantages are real. A 10 to 20 minute experience versus 4 to 6 hours for psilocybin means fewer staff hours, less equipment, and a more manageable clinical setting. Like psilocybin, DMT is given with psychological preparation and integration support, which remains a critical and often under-discussed component of these interventions. None of these treatments are appropriate for unsupervised use. Now, what should clinicians actually take from this? First, The Phase 2 data for DMT is promising, but early. 2 Phase 2 trials, combined N of 48, is not sufficient to change clinical practice. Both trials use psychological support as part of the intervention, and the contribution of the psychedelic experience itself to the antidepressant effect remains an active research question. Second, DMT is not FDA approved for any psychiatric indication. Third, the safety profile so far appears favorable with no serious adverse events in either Phase 2 trial. But these are small controlled settings with intensive monitoring. The trajectory is worth watching. DMT represents a credible next entry in the psychedelic psychiatry pipeline with a potentially more practical profile than psilocybin for clinical implementation. Questions or episode ideas? Drop them below and subscribe for more psychopharmacology breakdowns. Educational purposes only, not a substitute for clinical judgment.